All right, so hello guys, welcome to today's weekly call, and we are going to continue to the topic of ordinals today. Okay, so last week we briefly introduced what is ordinals and how does it work. We also show why is it's a big deal for sCrypt because it's fully composable with arbitrary sCrypt smart contract. Because of the how it is designed. Basically, they work on the Satoshi and also the script that contains the inscription is pretty much is a no op. So basically, it doesn't affect the whole script. So that's why it's a very good combination of sCrypt, okay, an extension of sCrypt. So we showed how do how does it work, and also show one example, how do you make sure use sCrypt smart contract to make ordinals transfers, so-called permission. Basically means every single time you transfer it, you need someone to co-sign. In this case, the issuer. Okay. So this week we are going to continue the journey, but we are going to show more examples. More advanced examples, how sCrypt can integrate very well with ordinals. Okay. So let's look at the second example. Okay, which is basically we're trying to auction. We're trying to auction off an ordinal token, or you can represent anything, right? Because it's like any other token particle. You can represent a piece of art, a piece of music, article, some JPEG, okay, or whatever that token represent. Okay, so in this idea, okay, so okay, how many of you have seen our like auction contract before? Anyone? It's in official doc. I think it's the second tutorial. Anyone?
No,
Yes,
Okay. So how does that work in general? Can anybody? Let me show you that doc thing. Oh, now it's the third one because we add the time lock. Anyway, so can anybody just briefly explain how that original auction works? Anyone? Okay, go ahead, Yusuf.
so can you hear me?
Yes.
So the original auction, uh, it consists of the auctioneer and a bidder and the highest bidder. Then when the auction started, the auctioneer is the first bidder, and when a lead bidder bid, and the contract will check if the bid has the highest bid than the current bid. If the bid is greater than the current bid, then the highest bidder would be objected, and the previous bidder would be refunded.
Yes. How does it get closed? How does it, if there's that usually there's some deadline to it, right? So what happened after the deadline expires?
So after the deadline expires, the auctioneer will receive the fund and the bidder will receive whatever is being auctioned.
Yeah, very good. Okay, so you have been reading our docs. So, the auction, is the highest bid win auction. I forget it's either I think it's Dutch or English, I forget. Anyway, so it's the highest bidder wins. So in this case, there are two phases. So how does the auction work? On high level. So on high level, it has a deadline, and before this deadline, anyone in the world, because it's contract, anyone can call this contract to submit their own bid, and the contract keep a state. Basically, it just keep just records whoever has the highest bid, and then put the fund in the contract balance. Okay, so after the bidding finishes, before the deadline, after the deadline, the auctioneer can collect the funds, right? So at the same time, he's also giving the ordinal represent FT, transfer it to the highest bidder. Okay, so that's a high level. So exactly how does it work? It's also, I think it should be straightforward, but only the difference thing here, we are integrated with ordinal here. So I think for the bidding, it's still the same process. Same, I show two transactions here on the left is inputs, on the right outputs. Okay, so this color ones, you can think about this is the contract, the auction contract instance. It just keep going, and it maintains the state. So state has two. You can think about two properties. One is who is the highest bidder so far, and what is the highest bid. Okay, so in this case, when it's first start, Alice bids with 10 satoshis, and then he wins. Now he's the highest bidder, and then Bob plays a higher bid, so he wins. He pays 20 satoshis, and then so on and so forth. And Charlie now overbids Bob by placing 30 satoshis. Okay, so just keep updating. Okay, this one is the same one as before, so no surprise. So far, you don't see any ordinals here, right? Nothing, it's just satoshis. Okay, as before. And the only difference is in when you try to close the auction. Okay, so when you close, now you have to involve the ordinal. Okay, here. So let's say now this is the last bid, and currently this is the highest bidder here. So when you close, what kind of actions have to happen when this is about to close? What needs to happen? Can anyone have a guess?
If the auction is closed, then the bidder will receive the ordinal and the auctioneer will get the fund.
Yes. Okay. So basically, it's almost like atomic exchange here. So the highest bidder will pay the auctioneer, and then auctioneer will, transfer the ordinal to the highest bidder. Okay. So this is exactly what happens here when it closes. So basically, two things happen. First, the fund, is kept here, right, in the stateful contract, goes to the auctioneer, and also at the same time, okay, the ordinal that's locked up front has to go to the highest bidder. Let's say it's Charlie, right? So here, the Charlie's funds goes to the auctioneer, and then at the same time, in the same transaction, the ordinal has to go to Charlie. So that's finished the whole auction, right? Auction. Okay. And then the question here is, how do we make sure nobody can cheat here? What if I give for example, I have an ordinal that's already transferred. It's already so ordinal, as we talked before, right? It fits very well with Bitcoin smart contract because as Bitcoin, Satoshi, it also resides in UTXOs, right? So let me ask you guys a question. What if the ordinals has already been spent? What will happen? This UTXO already spent. Is this a problem?
I think so. If it's already spent, the script will return false, I guess.
So, say that again.
Yeah, so I'm assuming that it's same as if you are trying to use an already spent output. Then I guess the transaction will fail. So it doesn't matter if it's an ordinal or another UTXO. If it's already spent, the transaction should fail.
Yes, exactly. So in this case, it's kind of like getting stuck, right? So if the auctioneer is trying to cheat by placing an already spent ordinal here, so this transaction will fail, but also he cannot get paid, right? So in this case, I think, to make it more practical, there should be some kind of like a time lock here saying, hey, if this doesn't happen after a certain time, so the bidder should get his money refunded. So in this case, will not get stuck, and also But anyway, the auctioneer cannot cheat, right? If you place a fake one here, he cannot get paid.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's that's the advantage. I would say one of the biggest advantage why you don't want to do it in a smart contract on chain, because in the off chain case you can take the money without giving the bidder his ordinal. Okay, so how is this? Let's say in the sCrypt context, how is this one? Let's say, how do you specify the right ordinal in the contract, in the sCrypt contract? How do you specify it? Which ordinal? Because there's so many ordinals. So how does this contract make sure it's the right ordinal? Anyone have a idea? So how do you know this is like a pay 41, but not bought apes 21? Let's say. How does contract enforce that? It's the right ordinal.
I assume that you should have some type of in the code. You should have like the hash of the right one, and assert that the is the same hash that you are trying to send. I don't know.
Yes, about right. So basically, as we talked about before, again, we have to talk about again. It's just UTXO. So when you deploy it, you pretty much hard code where which UTXO the ordinals coming from. So you pretty much when you deploy it, right? When you deploy the contract, it's just hard coded there. It's in UTXO. You put it there, so it never change.
Can see.
Cannot change.
See which they cannot change, and they can see exactly which UTXO is that they are bidding to, right?
Yeah. Yes, you cannot swap it out. You cannot change it after it's deployed. Okay, yeah, that's how it works. Okay. Any questions so far? I hope this is straightforward. Anyone? Is this okay?
Yeah, good.
Yeah, so in this case, you can see it fits very well with our contract model because again, it's just UTXO. It's not some account or some other model. Okay, so this fits very well with us. Okay. All right, if no question, let's keep going, keep moving. Okay. So we just talked about how do so here, this ordinal, if you still remember the first one we did, the permission token. So that ordinal and the smart contract is in the same UTXO, right? Because when you spend it, you have to unlock the contract. And in this example, we just showed you, hey, even the ordinal and the smart contract, they can be in separate UTXOs, right? You can also combine this way. And the smart contract, because of the, you can access the whole transaction because of the sCrypt contract. So you can also control ordinals not in the same UTXO. So this one is the same, the contract, the sCrypt and ordinal is the same UTXO, and this one is they are in separate UTXOs. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's look at another example. In this example, we are using the contract and the ordinal in the same UTXO. Okay, how many people still remember, quite a while ago, we did this thing, which is very elegant, called the atomic swap using smart contract. So how does that work? Anybody can remind the audience?
Let me try it. So basically, both sent. So they first exchanged public key and proving that they have transferred the funds, and then with that public key they could unlock the box, so to say, and get the content from that box. So it's the transaction was started by Alice, for example, and then she sent Bob the public key that had been used, and then Bob could use that public key and his own private key to get the amount that he had bought, something like that. I remember.
Yes, about right. Yusuf, you want to add something or it's okay?
Yes, the whole concept, if I remember about the atomic swap, is like the process of swapping tokens that are on different blockchains.
Okay. So yeah, let me remind that for people who have not seen this, but if you want, you can read it the original one before. So basically, you use this contract called hash lock. Okay. So whatever Domingo just said, just I think it's about right. But the only thing I think is instead of public key, right? Use so-called is a hash lock here. So instead of exchange public key, you exchange the hash. You make sure two locks, yes.
Yeah.
So if you fix that, that is exactly what Domingo just said. So basically, it's like you place in a lockbox, and the lockbox has the same pin word. The pin is the so-called hash pre-image, and then you can see if you make sure the locks have the same kind of like a passcode, meaning they have the same hash. If you open one box, you give out the secret to open another box. And this can only happen if atomically, meaning if Alice takes Bob's coin, then Bob must also can be able to take Alice's coin. You cannot do this one way. It has to be both ways, or neither happens. It cannot be happen only one direction. Okay, so we use the contract back then called hash time lock contract. Okay, here's the thing. Because it's a UTXO and also because Ordinals fits very well with sCrypt. So in this case, we don't have to make any change to the smart contract at all. So that's the amazing part. So instead of, I think at the when we did last demo, we swap Bitcoin core coins BTC with Bitcoin SV, right? So here, let's say you want to swap some Bitcoin BSV Bitcoin with let's say Ordinals. You do the same thing because so two difference. One is instead of locking BTC and BSV, you lock up Ordinal here, right? But it doesn't matter because it's just UTXO and it fits very well with smart contract. You just lock up in the same contract. You don't even have to change a single line. So that's the message I want to deliver. So whether it's Satoshis you're locking or Ordinals, you don't change the contract at all. That's the best part. It's so compatible. Okay. So here you still lock the same thing. And so when Bob opens by revealing his hash per image, you get something you unlock and get the ordinal. Everything else is the same. So the only difference, you don't lock up Satoshis, you lock up ordinals. Everything remains. You to finish do atomic swap between ordinals and Satoshis. So if you can atomic swap Satoshis, then you can swap between ordinals as well. So imagine here, now we're swapping Satoshis with ordinals. You can also have many other combinations, right? You can do ordinals with ordinals. You just lock up ordinals in this contract, right? Lock up two ordinals. Or you can even do it cross chains, or on the same chain, doesn't matter. So far so good, or any questions? So this contract, you can go back and check with the original. It's exactly the same. Any comments, or is this straightforward. It's
Yeah,
going
I
to
think
Clear.
no atomic swap before. Go ahead. You were trying to say?
Okay, it's clear.
Okay. Domingo, good?
yeah. The only thing I think it was advised to add some lock time in the to prevent that the second guy, in this case Bob, already spent the first transaction or something like that. So they could, so you get your coins and the other guy cannot get them theirs because he's already spent. I
Oh,
can't remember exactly what was the solution, but maybe adding the unlocking time, so you have some time to change yours.
yes, yeah. I think that's a very it's very attentive to that detail. Basically, yeah, here because here instead of only the hash lock, you also have a time lock. Basically, what if something goes wrong, right? For example, Alice never initiated, it never puts the pin number. So otherwise Bob's coins are locked forever, right? Or it's ordinal in this case. So you want to make sure there's some kind of like a timeout. And the timeout, they have to be, yeah, basically Alice's timeout has to be smaller than Bob's timeout. So when after Alice redeems it, Bob have enough time to take out the ordinal. Yeah, makes sense? So yeah, you
Yes.
always for this kind of contract, when people, if you everybody follows the protocol, it's good. But what if something happens, goes wrong, right? So yeah, a lot of time you have this kind of like a time lock as like a escape hatch. If people don't behave honestly, people have a ways to get refunded. Okay.
Yeah, no, but I think that there was another case where Alice, so she sends the first transaction, and with that hash, the Bob is trying to retrieve the his own, but Alice could potentially spend the the first UTXO in a second transaction, right? That there could be a double spend attempt in.
Double spend. Because this one you need Bob's private key. So I don't think you need Alice. Or Alice, the problem is she can refuse to open the box. So that's the problem for Alice that Bob is concerned with. But she cannot double spend. You see here, this lock has to be opened by Bob's private key.
Yeah, but no, but what I mean is that if the final coins comes from UTXO from Alice, right?
Yes.
And what if Alice, after sending the money to Bob, and then Bob's need to use his private key to get the coins? What if Alice double spend that money?
Oh, it's locked up in the lockbox. So if he spends this, it's going to reveal the pin. So here, right? So in like when she set up, Alice in this case, yeah, she's has ordinal. She's put the ordinal in this mailbox, locker box B, and then Bob's lock up the satoshis in the mailbox A. So then Alice to open, she needs to get the satoshis, so she needs to reveal the pin. Now after she reveals, Bob can check out the pin on chain and then open the box with Alice's ordinal in this case. So I don't understand whether there's no, how do you double spend? So you are saying Alice must open mailbox B?
So
Is that
there is, let me know if I got this right. So there are underlying transactions. In this case, Alice wants Satoshis. So and Bob's wants Ordinal. Okay. So then that means that Alice is sending this Ordinal to Bob. Is putting this Ordinal for Bob in the mailbox, right?
Yeah, this is Bob's mailbox. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So this Ordinal is a UTXO. So can't she send the UTXO to herself later, and then it's already spent?
No, she has to lock it up and deploy it on chain. Lock up meaning you broadcast the transaction, right? Then Bob can check. Oh, is it real?
Okay. Yeah. I think I got it now. So yeah. So the
Yeah, you have to
UTXO is locked, and then
Yeah.
she cannot unlock it unless she has Bob's private key.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Now I get it. Yeah. Thanks.
So if you look at the color, yeah, this is Bob's. This is the Bob's color. So you can almost from the color. So you need Bob's key to open the lock. Here.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now,
So it's not something kept offline. You can where you only promise not to spend the UTXO. There's no such something. Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, but good question. Yeah. And I think I'm going to cover one more, and then we can call it a day. We can cover, yeah. The next, we're going to look at the, let's say so far, right? We have to cover ordinals, but it's only for the case is so-called non-fungible version, meaning you use this ordinal to uniquely represent one thing and one thing only. And this thing is not divisible. It's not exchangeable, right? It's like let's say you have a ordinal representing Mona Lisa, or the title of your car, right? There's no two versions or two units, right? So this is called an empty, non-fungible version. But we can also use ordinals to do fungible tokens. Okay, how many have heard about this? You can use heard about that. You can use ordinals, but also to do fungible tokens. Anyone heard about this? You don't have to know how it works, but okay, Yusuf. You heard about this?
Yes, I heard about it.
Okay, what is it called? Or in big space, what is it called? Do you know?
The BSD20.
Yes. Okay. Do you know how to work? How to work?
So I heard about it. It's like a ERC20 compatible token on BSD20.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, exactly right. I don't know whether you can see from here, but I already give out the hint or the answer. Okay, here. So it's ordinals, as we talked about before. You can inscribe arbitrary data into a Satoshi, right? So for the empty case, you just inscribe some picture or video or whatnot, right? But you can also inscribe, let's say, protocol data. It's almost like ordinals is like a meta protocol, and then you can define within this ordinal some other so-called sub protocols. In this case, we call it BSV20. It's similar to the idea of ERC20, and that's where the name comes from. So instead of inscribe a text or picture, you inscribe a JSON file to define all the rules of the tokens. Okay, for example, here in the BSV20, you inscribe the content inscribe is BSV20 JSON. So this should be familiar if you've done any kind of like a JavaScript or any kind of data exchange using one of the most popular, if not the most popular data format called JSON. So you have basically you have key value pairs. Okay, so in this case, the P stands for, in this case, you inscribe this using the Ordinal protocol to a set. So this is the protocol name, BSV20. You have the operation. You know, when you first call it, you have deploy, and you have a ticker symbol, got an audio here. You have the max supply. You have the limit. Okay, so now let's dive into how a BSV fungible tokens work. So if you still remember, this is the Ordinal protocol, right? From the last session we had. So basically, you inscribe anything, any content into a Satoshi. So you just have to let me know what's the content and what type of content it is. Is it PDF or, you know, HTML, whatever it is. It can be anything. So in this case, it's a JSON. The content is a JSON. The type is a JSON. Okay. Of course, we put it here called application/BSV20, but it's essentially a JSON file. You are inscribing. Okay. So the token, BSV20 token has three operations. First, you deploy it. Then you can mint until you reach the max supply. And the limit, what does this limit mean? Means every single mint, you cannot mint more than, in this case, 1,000 tokens. And this is a ticker. This is what is called ODI. So you have to say, hey, what I'm minting, what token I'm minting, and how many I'm minting. So this amount cannot exceed the limit. This is a limit per mint, okay? So this is a little bit different from a so-called ERC20. So in this case, you deploy, then you mint many times. Instead of ERC20, usually when you first deploy, you also issue all the supply to the, let's say, the issuer or some kind of like admin. But in this case, let's say Alice deploys, Bob, Charlie, Dave, they can all mint. And whoever mints first, you know, it's like a first come, first service. Whoever mints this, you get the tokens. Okay. Make sense so far?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So after you mint tokens, next thing, of course, you want to transfer it, right? So that's how it works. The transfer also use the same idea. It's also based on UTXO model. So instead of transfer Satoshis, you transfer in the BSV20 tokens. So you have to make sure all the tokens in the outputs should not exceed the sum of tokens in the inputs, right? So once you have a UTXO containing, let's say, 1,000 ODI tokens, you have an input spend from it, and then let's say you have 1,000, right? So you are breaking up into 3 token outputs, each containing 100, 500, 400, respectively. So you sum them up, it's 1,000, right? So this one, yeah, this can go to anybody. And if there's, usually the last one is a change, but that's like a finite. It can be anybody. It's almost like Satoshis. Make sense so far?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so once you have this 3 rule set, you have defined your BSV20 token, right? You deploy, you can mint, and then you know how to transfer it. It's like pretty much like Satoshis. Okay, but it's just encoded in a JSON file, inscribed. Okay. So previously we talked about how to auction NFT ordinal, but here let's also talk about one example. Let's say you want to auction, let's say 20, let's say 500 ODI tokens. How would you do it? Is almost the same, I would say, with the previous one, right? Because here it's still all UTXO based, so you still hard code this. You make sure the Ordinal goes to the high speeder. So in this regard, it's very similar to the NFT Ordinal, right? Because still you have to do two things. But the only difference here is, can anybody see any difference here? So here you have an inscription, but in the Ordinal case, in the FT case, if you still remember, when after you transfer, you don't have to inscribe again. You can drop the inscription. Anybody still remember this? So when you do NFT, right? Let's say you want to use inscribe a picture. You only inscribe it for the first time, and then you can keep transferring. But after the first transfer, you don't inscribe the picture again. So it's like you go to you drop the inscription. But in this case, because you have to remember, right, how many token, what's the token balance in each output, so you have to inscribe even after the transfer. You have to inscribe again, but with a different amount. Make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the only difference is here, when you hardcode, you could still hardcode the Ordinal when you auction, but the thing is you have to make sure this the output format is correct. So in this case, so you make sure, oh, if I have 500 tokens here, this still has the 500. You have to make sure this inscription is there, because otherwise people can, the auctioneer can change the amount here, right, to the wrong amount. So you make sure when 500 come here, 500 is here, you make sure this inscription is what you expected. So let's say this have 500 OD tokens. You make sure still 500 here. But versus the empty, you only transfer to, let's say, a Bitcoin address. And then that's good enough. But in this case, you want to make sure also the inscription is what you expected. That's exactly what is being checked here using the so-called script context. Okay, so let's say this inscription, is looks like this, right? So let's say you are, auctioning 1,000 OD tokens. So that's what this one represent. You make sure this one is in the new Ordinal output to make sure the Ordinal actually gets transferred. Because it's the fungible, now you have to make sure that the inscription is there. Versus the non-fungible, the inscription is dropped. So that's the only change you need. Everything else is the same with the optional contract before. All right.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's. Any other questions for today?
No, that's clear. Thanks.
It's good. All right. Yeah, I hope you are enjoying all this Ordinals, smart contracts. So let's call it today, and hopefully see you all next week when we are going to talk about more Ordinals examples. Okay. All right.
Thanks so much.
Everyone. Okay. My pleasure. Okay. See you next time. Thanks for coming.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.